Persons who possessed certain firearms during the injunction week, those guns are going to be illegal if indeed the state's Protect Illinois Communities Act is upheld. Good morning, Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. And as we start most of the programs, it's been following litigation against Illinois' gun and magazine ban that was enacted back January 10th of this year. And you also had another provision of it go into effect on April 10th, which laid out that you had... or was it April 20th? Either way, several weeks ago, you could not have certain magazine capacities out in public. If you were caught, you could get a petty offense of $1,000 fine, and if you had certain weapons or firearms that were non-compliant, you could face a felony charge. So that obviously is something that has a lot of people's attention, and is why we've been focusing on it each and every day, because there's a lot of twists and turns. So if you recall, you had 4 cases in the Southern District of Illinois where Judge Stephen McGlynn last month heard oral arguments, and then weeks later he issued a preliminary injunction blocking the law from being implemented for 6 days before the states asked McGlynn to reverse his stay. He put out a schedule for briefings. The states then went around all the way to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals and asked the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals to essentially have a stay on the injunction. So 6 days worth of the injunction being in place, you had a lot of people go to gun stores and purchase semi-automatic rifles, shotguns, handguns, parts, magazines, and so on. On Friday, we talked with the compliance officer with GAT Guns out of East Dundee, Nicole Guavanzo, and she talked about how much sales they saw come through during that 6 days the injunction was in place. Here's Nicole Guavanzo.
So we are a very high volume firearm dealer. So we normally run a pretty big business. Even with the ban, we were still, pretty busy. This was another level back to, say, COVID times, where we had lines out the door, down the block, hundreds and hundreds of people. Firearms, I don't have a count yet. I would say probably close to, by the time they're disposed, it's probably about 500-600, maybe more.
So about 500-600 firearms that they sold during that 6-day period. The injunction was in place, blocking the state from enforcing the law. And some thought that the injunction would last even longer than just 6 days, because really you'd never know how courts are going to be operating with a timeline. So it wasn't clear whether or not the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals would jump in and put a stay on that injunction. But then, late Thursday last week, that injunction was stayed by the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. What does that mean for those who may have started a firearms purchase early Thursday morning? When I talked with Nicole Friday, she was still unclear as to what that would mean.
In January, when the gun ban hit, the state made an allotment for that, where anybody who had a background check in place, they were able to complete their transaction. We are seeking legal counsel on whether we can complete these transactions or not, and we have not heard a final decision on that.
So the final decision on that, what is the final decision? I reached out to Illinois State Police. I'll tell you about that here in a moment. But another gun store owner that I talked with shared some other details as to what they're facing and their reaction to the preliminary injunction being reversed by the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. Here is Max and Shooter Supplies and Displays owner Dan Eldridge talking about the injunction being stayed by the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay, well, the initial reaction is obviously disappointing. We knew there were going to be ups and downs to this process all along. This was not the way we expected for it to proceed. We fully expected the state to play by the rules of procedure of the federal court system, which means they have to see it through the district court first before through the edit that out of there, through the district court first, and then up to the Circuit Court of Appeals. Well, they jumped right to the Circuit Court of Appeals when Judge McGlynn had a briefing schedule in his court. So that was a bit of a surprise. that Judge Easterbrook ruled the way he did. He was the one sitting on the appeals panel for the week, and unfortunately, we drew a virulently anti-gun judge. Judge Easterbrook is the author of Friedman versus Highland Park. That was the original assault weapon ban, and he went so far as to cite that in his response note, which is itself facially absurd because Friedman is old law. It would never survive any level of scrutiny now, but here we are. So where does this leave gun buyers? We've rolled the clock back to January 9th, only slightly worse. I'm sorry, we've rolled the clock back to January 10th, only we're slightly worse off because we don't have the opportunity to complete sales now that are in process awaiting background check. So our advice to customers is sit tight. We're going to appeal this. We're going to go through the process. We're going to get clarity from Judge McGlynn on his order, whether we can open the window to deliver people their property, or imagine somebody who brought a firearm into gunsmithing and we took it in good faith to repair it, and now we can't return it to them. It's very sudden, very abrupt, and frankly unnecessary. You issue a stay, an emergency stay, when there's an emergency. What precisely was the emergency that precipitated this? You had law-abiding Illinois citizens going on about their lawful business, buying guns like they've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. There was no emergency. So obviously disappointing. This is not the last word. We're not clear on what the calendar looks like, but there should be a great deal more clarity on that by next week.
Again, that's the conversation I had with Dan Eldridge and also with Nicole Guavenzo from Gad Guns early on Friday. And also early Friday, I put in a request for a statement from Illinois State Police, and I didn't get that back until late Friday afternoon. And my question was, what's the status of those who purchased firearms during the injunction? Will they be able to complete a sale? Well, they laid out a response late Friday, and some of you have seen this already, but let me go ahead and just show it so that we can all read it together here. And that is here from the Illinois State Police in consultation with the Illinois Attorney General's office. If the purchase of a firearm or firearm attachment banned under the Protect Illinois Communities Act was initiated but not completed between the date of the Southern District's injunction until the stay on the injunction, the delivery of such weapon would be unlawful pursuant to the Protect Illinois Communities Act. Goes on to say, if the purchase of a firearm or firearm attachment banned under the Protect Illinois Communities Act was initiated and completed the date of the initial injunction between the stay, the possession of such weapon will be unlawful beginning January 24th, January 1st of 2024. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you purchased a firearm during that 6-day injunction, then it's illegal. And that's after the registration deadline of January 1st, 2024. And the final paragraph of the statement I got from Illinois State Police late Friday says, persons who possess a banned firearm or firearm attachment are required to endorse an affidavit by January 1st, 2024, stating that any banned firearm or firearm attachment were possessed prior to the enactment of the Protect Illinois Communities Act, January 10th of 2023. So that's the latest statement from the Illinois State Police about the status of individuals who purchased a firearm that falls underneath the Protect Illinois Communities Act as a, quote, assault weapon. And that means that if you did purchase a weapon between the injunction being enacted and the stay reversing that injunction, those weapons that you purchased, if they're a semi-automatic weapon of the 170 more guns that the state's called assault weapons, they're going to be illegal because you have to provide an affidavit saying that you possessed those firearms before January 10th of 2023. How does this impact the temporary restraining orders that say you may have keeping you safe or keeping a gun store safe from either the Thomas DeVore cases or the Dan Calkins cases? That's an interesting question that's still very unclear at this moment because You have previous state police statements talking about the injunction, the temporary restraining order that was issued in the Macon County case. And the frequently asked questions, we'll get to that here in a moment and talk about what else is happening with gun litigation. That's all on the way here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Getting out the latest in the ongoing litigation against Illinois' gun ban. Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. And as we were just discussing previously, late Friday, I got a response from Illinois State Police about what the status is for those who purchased firearms during the 6-day injunction that was issued by Southern District of Illinois Federal Judge Stephen McGlynn. And state police said persons who possess a banned firearm or firearm attachment are required to endorse an affidavit by January 1st, 2024, stating that any banned firearm or firearm purchase were possessed prior to the enactment of the Protect Illinois Communities Act. So that obviously is a big overarching question as to what's going to happen with those who purchased firearms during that 6-day window. Are those firearms going to be illegal? Are you going to have to transfer those out of state? Are state police, a big question about, hey, they helped to prove various background checks for people who did go during that 6-day window to purchase firearms while the injunction was in place. Are those gun stores going to face some kind of negative ramifications for having essentially enacted a sale between an individual and the gun store and a firearm transfer that could have been outside of the law if this law is upheld? So there's still a lot of moving pieces in as far as what happens next, and especially for those who have a temporary restraining order, keeping them safe from PICA being enforced against them. And these all stem from the state level cases. With Thomas DeVore, he's got thousands of named plaintiffs and gun stores that are safe from enforcement with a temporary restraining order in place. You also have the Macon County case with State Representative Dan Calkins leading that effort. And if you look at Illinois State Police in their website for frequently asked questions, it says, does the Macon County case completely strike down the Protect Illinois Communities Act and render it unenforceable across Illinois? It says the current Macon County judgment and any TRO entered in other actions are only applicable, if I can speak this early in the morning, to specific plaintiffs and defendants in those actions. Then they say more information will be forthcoming as additional rulings transpire throughout the state and federal courts and when the Illinois Supreme Court rules on the matter. The Illinois Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments in this case coming up May 16th. So that's the state level cases, but the federal level cases, you've got a whole bunch of other actions that are happening there as well, including a possible effort to consolidate these 4 cases from the Southern District with several cases out of the Northern District. Friday, a docket on the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, it spells out that they're looking to consolidate, and all of the different plaintiffs and defendants that are going to be part of this. You've got Chicago, Cook County, Illinois State Police, Kwame Raoul, Caleb Barnett, Hoods Guns and More, National Shooting Sports Foundation, Brian Norman, Pro Gun and Illinois Range, C4 Gun Store, LLC, Firearms Policy Coalition, Dane Harrell, Illinois State Rifle Association, Marengo Guns, Second Amendment Foundation, and a bunch of other names, including Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois, Gun Owners Foundation, Gun Owners of America, Gun Save Life, and more. So they're essentially looking to consolidate all of these challenges with different rulings because the Southern District put an injunction in place while the Northern District judges sided with the state and local gun bans. So if all of these get consolidated, we could see at least an easier way to track all of these cases. But you've got to also ask, where does this go from here? Well, they're going to have hearings on the preliminary injunction, on the merits of the challenge, and we expect it to go all the way to the Illinois Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court, where you have the Naperville case in front of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and she has given deadlines of today to have Naperville respond to the ongoing challenge that they're bringing forward, seeking a preliminary injunction. So you can see here in my most recent report at thecentersquare.com, plaintiffs in the Southern District case have until tomorrow to reply to the stay in the Seventh Circuit. Separately today, Naperville has to answer to U.S. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett in a motion for an emergency injunction sought by plaintiffs' law weapons. And on Friday, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, as we just discussed, looked to consolidate. All of those interested parties have to respond by May 11th. So a lot of moving pieces here, but again, the latest is what a lot of people are, concerned about is what happens to those individuals who purchased firearms during that 6-day window. The injunction was in place, and Illinois State Police saying that if the purchase of a firearm or firearm attachments happened between when the injunction was issued and the stay was put in place, those firearms would be illegal because they were possessed after the Protect Illinois Communities Act was enacted. So, again, that's the statement I got Friday from Illinois State Police. You surely have seen that all over the place, but there's a lot of moving pieces here, and we will continue to follow this here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. Connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube and get the latest updates, so make that happen. All right, it's right here on WMAY.